It's time for some more Women's Prize reading, and I'm going to do the same as I did with my last reading vlog, where I picked one book that both I and the Women's Prize put on our wish lists and long lists, one book that's purely from the Women's Prize for Fiction long list, and one book that was on my wish list but the Women's Prize didn't pick, and we're going to pit them off against each other. So for this vlog I have picked 3 new books. The book that both I put on my wish list and the Women's Prize long listed that I've got left to read is The Correspondent by Virginia Evans. I'm so excited to read this. I was being a bit cheap and didn't want to buy myself a hard copy, and I've had to hunt down via several libraries a copy of this, and as you can see this is due back in a week, so I need to get reading, but I'm really excited for this one. It's about an older protagonist called Sybil and the letters that she writes, so the whole thing is epistolary. It's all written in letter form. I'm very much looking forward to this. The next book that I've picked purely from the Women's Prize for Fiction long list is Kingfisher by Rozie Kelly. This is about a man who teaches creative writing, and he is in a relationship with somebody that feels very safe and loving, but he starts to fall for somebody at work known as the poet in the blurb. And the poet represents everything that his partner doesn't. The blurb says, this is a novel about grief and power and desire and the tangles in between that make up a life. That sounds fantastic. I've heard only good things about this. Like literally everybody that I've seen review this has liked it to loved it. So I'm really excited to get to this one. And they're not listed for the Women's Prize, but on my wish list. As a quick aside, I was going to pick up At Sea by Y.M. Abdul-Majid, because I had a proof copy of it and I'm really keen to read it, but it's not out until May, which means it wouldn't have been eligible for this year's Women's Prize, which also means that it will be eligible for next year, which means that that's my first prediction for Women's Prize 2027. So instead I've opted for The Almond Garden of Kabul by Mandana Hendessi. This is by a press who I hadn't heard of before, Asana Press, based in London, so that's exciting. This is set in a women's prison in Kabul, and a young teenage inmate sets herself on fire. The guards write it off as a suicide attempt, but there are 2 other inmates who, I think one is in there for kind of fighting back against an abusive husband and another is in there for a crime she didn't commit. And they suspect that it was an act of defiance and protest. It says, set against a brutal system built to erase the convicted women, The Almond Garden of Kabul is a haunting story of resistance, remembrance, and the fire women carry within them. So we've got some pretty big hitters potentially with these 3 books. We're going to do the same thing as I did in my last reading vlog, where I'm going to read, I'll do the first line, we'll do a first line battle to get us started, and then I'll check in every quarter of my way through each of these books, reading them simultaneously and compare and contrast them as we go. If you did watch my last vlog, one thing that I'm not going to do this time is the graph thing, because that was a real pain in the arse, and it took a lot of time and effort and the result wasn't great. It wasn't what I wanted, so we're just not going to do that bit. But everything else should go in a fairly similar format. So next up I will be showing you my first line battle. So let's see what comes out on top. Do the Women's Prize and I have the best taste? Is it the Women's Prize, or was my wish list a winner? I am just back from a decidedly mediocre and definitely disappointing Sunday roast, but thought we would do the first line battle before I dig into these books tomorrow morning now. So starting with The Correspondent, let's find the first line. A quote. Okay, a preface. At last, on Monday around 10 or 30, Sybil van Antwerp carries the mug of Irish breakfast tea with the milk to her desk. Lovely. Charming. I mean, it's not setting the world on fire, but it's lovely. Next up, let's try Kingfisher. I can pinpoint almost to the second when I realised I wanted to fuck her. Do we have a winner? Amazing. Okay, and The Almond Garden of Kabul. I will eat this book if it's better than that. Yeah, okay. Prologue. They called it Bad and Bag. That's the first sentence. We have our winner by a country mile. What did it say? I love an impactful first line. I can pinpoint almost the second when I realised I wanted to fuck her. Great. Okay, so far as the first line stand, we have streets ahead of the other two. Kingfisher, followed by Correspondent, followed by The Almond Garden of Kabul. So that's going to be the order in which we read these three. I will be back with a check-in once I've read the first quarter of them all. I'm coming to you not with an update, but it is the day that the Women's Prize for Fiction shortlist is announced. And so I thought I would capture my reaction. Obviously, I've got no predictions because I've only read a couple of them so far, but I thought I would share with you the moment that I find out what's on the shortlist. So here goes.
Hello, I'm Julia Gillard.
Hi,
and
Julia.
As this year's Chair of Judges, I'm thrilled to share with you the 2026 Women's Prize for Fiction shortlist. Flashlight by Susan Choi is a masterfully plotted, multi-generational saga which explores the impact of a father's disappearance from his family. It's an extraordinary
I wasn't
book
mad
that
keen on
constantly
reading this
disrupts
one.
your expectations.
Do you think I
and wears
should?
its
Do I need
dark
to read this
history
now?
so lightly. Dominion
Ah,
by Addie E. Kitchens is told from the perspective of Priscilla, the wife of a preacher and mother of 5 sons. And
Yes,
Diamond,
Dominion.
high
So
school
I read
student
this
who falls for
in
Priscilla's
my
youngest
last
son,
Women's
Wonder
Prize
Boy.
reading
I
vlog.
loved this novel.
was
The
great.
strength of voice in the female characters, the craft of the plotting, and mostly the deft and very chilling way in which the book explores sexual assault and power dynamics in patriarchy. The Correspondent by
Ah,
Virginia
the Correspondent.
is an incredibly original story told entirely in letter format. It's about a woman named Sybil who lives a fabulous life. It's warm, it's heartfelt, it's gorgeous, and it really makes you
Oh, I'm really pleased that one of the ones that I'm reading
in
in this vlog has made it onto the shortlist. That's great.
The Mercy
Ah,
Step by Marcia
interesting.
Hutchinson.
So originally this was one that I was really keen to read, and then I've seen some really mixed reviews,
Right through
but I'll
the very
reconsider that now.
Mercy is a truly unique character, and I loved how Hutchinson has captured a beautiful and tender portrait of what it takes to leave where you come from and forge your own future.
Kingfisher
Current
by
read.
Rozie Kelly is a taut, lyrical,
Haven't I chosen
emotionally
wrong?
intense novel that explores love, trauma,
Isn't that funny? The two books that I'm reading in this vlog have been shortlisted. I mean, that's very convenient.
Take on power dynamics and character. I found it a mesmerising read.
Oh, okay, Heart the Lover.
King takes us from first love and the intellectual fervour of
Is that all of them?
the sobering realities
I don't know how many we've
of
had.
middle age and loss.
So I
It's
read
three
Writers and
parts.
Lovers by
This
Lily
novel
King,
gives us slices of life and distills what really matters.
prior to reading this one, so I'd be up for reading it. I'm not sure Lily King is going to be a writer for me.
There you go, the 6 titles
There we go.
that make up the 2026 Women's Prize for Fiction shortlist. You're guaranteed to find a favourite from these 6 amazing books.
Okay. So no Guardian and a Thief. Sad times. But I'm pretty pleased with that. I've done quite well there. Dominion's on there, and obviously the Correspondent in Kingfisher that I'm currently reading. So out of those, I'll consider reading The Mercy Step and Heart the Lover. I'm just not sure I want to read Flashlight. Do you know what it is? If it was shorter, I'd give it a go. How bad is that? If you've read it and think that it would work for me or that it's really worth trying, then let me know. I'm just not sure. But actually, if I've then read all of the others and that's the only one left on the shortlist that I haven't read, then it just makes sense to do it. I don't know. I'm overthinking as per usual. But yeah, great shortlist. Really interesting. Super. Happy with that. I've been sat here for about 10 minutes waiting for people to come go from the car park so that I can film this. But I'm a quarter of a way through all 3 of these books. You know, if you watch my last vlog where I did this and read 2 Women's Prize books and one from my wish list and kind of compared them as I went, my problem last time was that it was really difficult because they were all absolutely fantastic. My problem this time is that they're all terrible. No, joking. But my problem this time is that they are all very, very, very different. So it's making it hard to compare them from that point of view. But anyway, let me give you a brief overview. So Kingfisher by Rozie Kelly. This is about a chap who is doing like a short-term position at a university as a professor. And he's just generally kind of quite a pissed off person with the world. He's in a relationship with a man. They've decided that they can have sex with other people. And so whilst he's working at the university, he becomes infatuated by a woman, a colleague, and she is a poet, known as the Poet. So that's what's going on in this book. The writing is really brash, but at the same time quite flowery. So yeah, I'm enjoying the kind of like confronting brashness of it. It's quite sweary, which I'm enjoying, like being in the inner monologue of this main character's head. But also there's just such a lot of similes. I really like really quite plain, understated, pared back writing with a few really well placed similes and metaphors for imagery, and I think just a little bit of that can be really powerful. But there's quite a lot in here and they're all really good. They all deliver like a really powerful image, but I've just found myself pausing thinking, is this too much? I think it's deliberate because it's about a poet, right? So I suspect that's what's going on. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Kingfisher so far. The Correspondent by Virginia Evans is exactly what I was expecting. It's just delightful. Sybil, our main character, we're getting to know her through the letters that she writes. We don't get to see many of the letters that she receives in return, and so it's setting up a few different little mysteries for us because she alludes to something in a letter that she's writing to somebody, but we don't always know what that incident was or why it was, and so yeah, it's setting up a little bit of intrigue. I'm enjoying this kind of well enough so far. And then The Almond Garden of Kabul by Mandana Hendessi. This one's set in a women's prison in Afghanistan, and the premise in the blurb is that a young inmate sets herself on fire, and it's implied that that was a suicide attempt, but then there's a couple of other inmates that feel that it might not have been, it might have been an act of protest. So that incident happens in the prologue, so we are straight into the action. And as I was reading it, I was kind of like, oh, I kind of wanted a bit more setup, like to know a bit more about the prison and the characters first. But then we go into getting to know the 2 main characters. Sultan is like the kind of boss of the, like, she's an inmate, but she's like the boss of the prison. She rules with fear, basically. She describes herself as identifying as a man. And she's saving up money for gender affirming care. She's saving up for gender reassignment surgery. I'm using the pronoun she, her because that's what the author is using, by the way. So there's Sultan, and then what's the other one? Satara. Oh, I'm not going to look it up. And then there's the other character, Satara, I think. She's more of a kind of like nurturing mother figure. Both have been imprisoned for really shitty things that weren't technically their fault. So Sultan has violently killed her abusive husband, and Sultan had been like married off very young for her bride price by her family, and Satara, there was a misunderstanding, and she's in prison for something that she didn't do and wasn't her fault either. So we've got their backstories afterwards, and I feel like there's been quite a lot of setup since that initial hook, and I feel like it's just kind of done things slightly in the wrong order for me. I feel like I needed to be invested a bit more in the characters before that event of the young person setting themselves on fire happening, rather than that being like the first thing you read about. And it was a bit discombobulating because I'm like, I can't imagine where we are and who these people are, and so it's done everything but just in a slightly kind of jumbled order for me. So I've been quite slow reading the first quarter of this, but it is starting to pick up now that I have all of the pieces, and that is a really strong hook, right, to kind of like draw you into the story. So I guess the other thing just to mention on this is that there's been a lot of character names, which I think in some places is a bit unnecessary. So it's really difficult to kind of compare these three and say which is the better book. Like, Almond Garden of Kabul is doing the most in terms of character writing and plot, and like setting up themes and messaging. The Correspondent is meeting my expectations the most and has been lovely. And the Kingfisher has probably been the one that I've got the most out of so far, that I was most keen to kind of like keep picking back up. So I don't know which one to say is the better book objectively. Do I say which is the book that's being most successful in achieving what it's setting out to do? Is it the one that I'm just enjoying the most? So I'm going to force myself into a decision and say that just based, I'm predicting this will change, obviously, otherwise this would be a really boring vlog. But just from the first quarter, I'm going to say third place is the Almond Garden of Kabul, just because the first quarter felt a bit info dumpy, but I think we're going to pick up. Then I'm going to say the Correspondent, and then I'm going to say in first place is Kingfisher. So I think actually, is that the same order as the first lines? Interesting. Okay, so that's where we are. I will read on and let you know where I'm up to when I get to halfway. Friends, I've just been to the gym and I'm on a little side mission at my parents'. I got my mum, it was my mum's birthday this week, and I got her a hedgehog camera. It was a rogue gift, a massive risk. Totally thought it was going to end up in a drawer, but alas, best gift ever. It's gone down very well. So they've gone away for a couple of days, and disaster has struck. The hedgehog camera has run out of charge. So I have been tasked with charging the camera up so that they can keep an eye on the hedgehogs whilst they're away. I'll insert some footage of what they've sent me. It is pretty cute. So yes, whilst I'm here, I thought I would give you a really quick whistle-stop update because I'm halfway through all of our books. So starting off with Kingfisher by Rozie Kelly. The headline for this is that I'm really loving it. The main character is really quite unlikable in the sense that you are getting his innermost thoughts, and I think in probably in quite an honest way, because I think we're all capable of having quite like shitty thoughts. We can all be arseholes in our heads at times. Or maybe I'm speaking for myself. I can be. And so in a quite uncomfortable and also simultaneously comforting kind of way, it's relatable. I'm sitting with a real kind of like discomfort at saying that, because this guy is not a likable guy, and I'm saying that it's relatable. Yeah. Anyway. Am I confessing something on the internet that I shouldn't be? I just think, we've all got kind of multitudes and layers, and some of that is less pleasant. And I quite like it when an author is able to present that really brutally honestly. So yeah, so I won't go into details about the plot because that would spoil things, but it's really weirdly moving. Considering these characters are not hugely, they're not lovable characters by any stretch of the imagination, but I feel really quite connected, but I care quite deeply for them, and I'm really invested in the outcome of what's going to come of their relationships in this book. The writing style, either I've adapted to it or it's settled down, I'm not sure, but it's bothering me a lot less. I mentioned before that I was finding there were just a lot of similes. So either that's settled down or I've just kind of tuned into it and it's less of an issue for me. But yeah, I'm really enjoying this very much. Next in my order of reading is The Correspondent by Virginia Evans. This is going to be my kind of like solid read of this vlog, I think. I don't think I've got anything additional to add at this point. I'm really enjoying it. I love Sybil as a character. She's just the perfect sort of verging on the edge of cantankerous, grumpy old woman. I'm liking the epistolary form because we're being shown, not told, bits of information, and there's enough there to pique your interest, but you're not given all of the answers straight away. Yeah, I like this very much. And also, I suppose, a bit like Kingfisher, this is indirectly quite touching. It's not deliberately pulling at your heartstrings, but the content and the way in which it's delivered and the strength of the character writing is making it quite an emotive read, if that makes sense. And then The Almond Garden of Kabul by Mandana Hendessi. Wow. Yeah, I don't even know where to start. I don't know that I said in the earlier clip, but just to sort of give credit to the author, there is a note from the author right at the start, which I really appreciated, because it kind of like solidifies her credentials to write on this topic. So she said, I first walked through the gates of Bag, Kabul's central prison for women, in the bitter winter of 2010. At the time, I was working for a women's charity in Afghanistan, leading programs focused on women's rights, gender justice, and civil society in conflict-affected regions. For several months, I visited the prison regularly. What I witnessed there shaped me irrevocably. The women of Baden-Berg had been accused of crimes, some real, many imagined. They were imprisoned not just for defying laws, but for rebelling against the systems behind them, systems that punish dissent, independence, and often survival itself. For 4 months, every weekend, I drank tea, listened to stories, and sat in dimly lit, overcrowded cells with women whose lives had been broken and buried long before they ever reached trial. And yet, what I found was not only despair, but defiance, wit, creativity, and fire. And those are the stories that she's captured in this fictional novel. So whilst the characters are fictional, and I suspect elements and the plot she's using is fictional, the backstories, as I'm reading this and getting the backstories of these characters and how they've ended up in prison, I'm reading them thinking, gosh, this is harrowing, but it's just landing differently, knowing that it's likely based on people's real experiences. It's extraordinary. So really, what I'm appreciating about this book is that the plot is loosely guiding us through learning about these women. So it's not plot heavy at all. So the setup was that a young inmate set herself on fire, and 2 other inmates who were sort of seen as leaders in the prison for different reasons. They were about kind of investigating what circumstances led up to that. There's not loads of that. There's enough to kind of like draw us through, but it's mostly focused on the women and their stories and why they've ended up in prison. And it's as rage-inducing and harrowing as you might imagine. So yeah, I'm very grateful for this book. I probably should say that the writing isn't perfect. I'm finding that there's a fair bit of repetition, so I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to give an example of that in the way that I'm speaking now. There's a fair bit of repetition because I'm finding that the same thing is said in a slightly different way. That's exactly what I've done. I've repeated what repetition is. None of us is perfect though, right? And I am also finding there's just a lot of character names when I feel like we don't need to know everybody's name, because when you read a character name, my brain is automatically trying to bank it, right? Trying to remember it, because it's telling me that that's something important that I need to remember, an important detail. But so for example, somebody will say like, oh yes, and her mother once said blah, blah, blah. But it would be her mother Nasrin once said blah, blah, blah. We don't ever meet the mother. We don't get to know anything about her character. We don't need to know anything else about her. So it's like an unnecessary detail that's kind of like clogging up the text for me a little bit. There's been a few examples of that. But that aside, it doesn't matter. What it's doing is really special. So how do I rank these? I am going to say, in first place, I'm going to put Kingfisher because I'm just sort of most invested in this, and the quality of the writing matches my enjoyment. Then I'm going to say The Almond Garden of Kabul, just because I've been so enthralled by the content of this so far. And then I'm going to say The Correspondent, and it's not because I'm not enjoying this one bit. I am absolutely loving The Correspondent, but it's the kind of like most unremarkable of the 3 books so far. So where are we up to with our reading? 3/4 of the way through. Kingfisher. I love this book. I love it very, very, very much. I am so invested in these characters and what's going to happen for them. There have been moments that have really taken my breath away. You will know that I really loved A Room Above a Shop by Anthony Chaplin last year. One of the scenes in there was between the two characters, M and B, one giving the other a haircut, and it was just so beautifully intimate in that moment of doing something so not intimate, but also really was. It wasn't sexual at all, but just so poignant. That's happened in this book, not a haircut, but one of the characters washes the other's feet. And, it's just excruciatingly painful in the most beautiful way. Yeah, I'm having a very good time with this. I'm not going to say it's up there with A Room Above a Shop, because that's God tier forever and ever. But this is up there as a potential for a favourite book. This is potentially the first book so far this year that I've been yeah, that's 100% going to be on my favourites, my top 10 by the end of the year. Yeah, very, very special. The Correspondent by Virginia Evans continues to be an absolute delight. The way that through these letters Sybil's vulnerabilities are being stripped back and exposed is really smart writing. I've seen other reviews where people haven't liked the fact that she writes to authors and they write back to her. And that feeling like it's a bit of an interruption to the book. I haven't felt that way. I've seen other criticism about the fact that Virginia Evans is giving voice to real people in the responses that the authors are sending to her fictional character. I hear that argument. I'm not sure that I feel strongly about it, but maybe that's wrong of me. It's not interfering in my enjoyment of the reading at all anyway. And interestingly, Sybil is the queen of analogue activities, right? Letter writing. She really likes gardening, and that's also something that I enjoy. I'm not very good at. But yeah, there's so much to love about Sybil. And then The Almond Garden of Kabul by Mandana Hendessi. Gosh, this is so hard hitting. I would really recommend checking out the trigger warnings if you want to go into this. I am just in awe of the stories that are being depicted through the characters in this book. And it's painting a really vivid picture of what life is like in a prison for women in Afghanistan. It's doing something really special. The plot's really picked up pace, and I feel like I've got a really good grasp of the main character, Sultan and Sitara. To be really clear, this book is doing something really wonderful, giving voice to real women's stories through these characters and this plot. That said, the writing isn't very good. I just want to be really honest. The repetition continues. I think every time tea has been mentioned, it's aromatic tea. The character name issue continues to the fact where there was a reveal at one point, which I missed. So we'd been given a character name earlier that we were kind of looking out for. We need to find out who this, what was her name? I forget what the name was, is. And that was revealed at a moment in the book. But I missed it because it was on a page where there were 11 other character names on one page. And so it just kind of got lost in there for me. And it wasn't until I was reading on and thinking, I've missed something, I went back and found it. So yeah, those things kind of endure. I was kind of reflecting, have I got this wrong? Am I being too hard on it? It might be that, the repetitive stuff is deliberate, because in a prison, like day in, day out, every day is going to look the same, isn't it? There is going to be a lot of repetition. So I was like trying to think about it a bit more critically and kind of question my observations. And then we came to a moment where somebody released a breath that they didn't know that they were holding, and I was like, no, okay, just I was on the right track. So really important book, incredible story. I'm so grateful to hear the stories of real women and their experiences through these characters and this book, but with the caveat that the writing isn't brilliant. So there we have it. So we are going to drop the Almond Garden of Kabul back down to 3rd place. And we are back to where we started with the Correspondent in 2nd place, and flying ahead is Kingfisher by Rozie Kelly. I'm sorry that this hasn't been more exciting in terms of my placings of these books, but it's been a really different reading experience reading these 3 together compared to my last vlog reading those 3 together, and maybe that's interesting in and of itself. I hope so. Anyway, as you know, if you've watched my last vlog, everything can change with an ending. Endings are really important and they can really make or break a book. So let's see where we land when we get to the end of these 3 wonderful books. Just letting you know for a bit of context that I am off this afternoon to something called Lie Down and Listen, where I'm going to this beautiful old, like, renovated church, and I'm going to lie down very comfortably whilst somebody does sound bowls, plays the harp and classical music to me. So that's going to be delightful. I'll try and film a bit inside the building because it is beautiful, but obviously not while it's all going on because I'm going to be lying down and listening. To give you a quick interim update, I finished Kingfisher, cried, finished the Correspondent, cried. So let's see if we get 3 for 3 with the Almond Garden of Kabul. So it has actually been a hot minute since I finished these 3 books, and I wanted to sort of leave them percolate for a little while, and that little while has turned into a long while. So I owe you an update. So first of all, wrapping up Kingfisher. I think this will be an all-time favourite book. I think it did something really quite special. I've seen lots of people talking about this. I've seen only good reviews actually, and I've seen lots of people talking about this in the context of it being about love and lots of different types of love. I think it's a bit more than that. I think this book is about all of the different types of heartache, specifically the ways that love can hurt. It's about yearning, it's about loss, it's about unrequited love, it's about grief, like weird grief, and all of that is packed into here, all of these different types of ways that the heart can ache. And it was just exquisite. Like, this was such a Kerry book. Like, leave me in that pain with slightly morally grey characters, sort of flawed but in the most lovable ways. There was some humour in here. It was kind of crass, with really lovely writing. I know, like I said at the start, the first quarter was sort of just sitting on the edge of being overwritten, but that completely dissipated for the rest of the book. It nailed that just gentle peppering of really lush sentences and great imagery that made you kind of like stop and reread sentences. I mean, that's one of my favourite things about picking up a really extraordinary book, is kind of finding those sentences that make you kind of like stop and think, this writing is really inspiring awe in me. So yes, I think I think I've gushed enough. Kingfisher was a firm hit. The Correspondent did something a little bit surprising in the end, I think. So as this was an epistolary novel and a really smartly written one, so the letters that go back and forth are not, you don't have the complete picture. So you don't have one letter from what's her name, Sybil, to one character and then their response. It kind of like skips on, and so you get to find out the outcome of disagreements or questions or whatever, sort of a few letters down the line when things have moved forward a little bit. And I think that's really quite smart writing for this style. But the thing that it also did was that there was a plot in here, which I think is really difficult to deliver in an epistolary novel. You'd think it would just be all vibes, and the vibes were great. I would have been happy with that. But in addition to that, the kind of like character study of Sybil and, just the kind of like vibes of her being a letter writer, you have this kind of like plot and mystery running through the whole book, which reveals itself in the end. And I think that was a really kind of really clever thing to do, a really smart thing to do. And it meant that the reading experience of this was just so rich. There was just so much in here to love. So I really adored this. I think it's a really special book. It's likely to be one that I kind of like recommend to lots of people. I think it's a good all-rounder. It's one that I'm likely to gift to people, I think. And it's made me want to write letters. And the lovely Heather at Bookish Brummie has very kindly offered to pen pal. So so that's really sweet. So I'm going to try my hand at writing some letters. I think, and what a lovely thing that this book has kind of inspired that. Really special book. And last but not least, The Almond Garden of Kabul. This came to a really satisfying conclusion in the end. Things wrapped up as I would have hoped that they would. I think I stand by what I've said about this book so far. I think it's fair to say that the writing isn't brilliant, but the plot and the characters and the message, I think, is value enough in itself. And for that, alone, I think it's a really worthy read, especially given the fact that the author has actually visited this prison and spent time with women in these circumstances and heard their stories and chosen to kind of like relay those through fiction. I think that's a real gift, and I'm really grateful to have read it. So that's our 3 books for this vlog, and it will come as no surprise hasn't been quite so exciting in the kind of like pitting them against each other this time. In third spot is the Almond Garden of Kabul. In second spot is The Correspondent, and a firm favourite of mine in top spot is Kingfisher by Rozie Kelly. This is my Women's Prize winner. I suspect it won't win, but this has been my favourite from the books that I've read from the Women's Prize so far. And I think for now that wraps up my Women's Prize reading. I'm keen to kind of like get to some other stuff now, and it won't be long before the winners announced. There are still some other books on the shortlist and from the long list that I'm interested in reading, and they'll stay on my wish list and I'll get to them as and when. I thought this was a really great long list this year, and I'm likely to get to most of them at some point in the future. I'd love to know what your favourite has been from the books that you've read from the Women's Prize long list this year, whether it's non-fiction or fiction, and any other books from your wish lists that you think you stand by and think should have been there. I'd love to know what you're thinking about the long list now that we're quite a way on since it was announced. But that's it for my Women's Prize content this year. I have already started my notes page, curating my list of books that might end up on my wish list for 2027. But thank you so much for joining me on this reading vlog. I hope that you're looking after yourself, and I will see you again in another video.